Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the Underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The Underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the Underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld Podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about the 8th and final episode of Season 1 of Skeleton Crew, the real good guys. Super excited to break this action-packed season finale down. My name is Chris, and joining me to help do that is my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, everybody. Yes, let's all put an extra emphasis on Season 1 when we're talking about the Season 1 finale, because it didn't work for the Acolyte, but let's manifest ourselves a second season of Skeleton Crew. If we couldn't get another season with Osha and May and the Stranger and all that, maybe we could get another season of Fern, KB, Neil, and Wim, and Jod. He seems to still be around. While we were getting ready to start the show, we were having some technical difficulties, and while these guys were figuring it out, I decided to take the StarWars.com quiz to find out which Skeleton Crew member is my BFF forever. And I'm pleased to report Neil. Neil and I will be going on adventures together. We'll start it off with watching the acrobats, and we'll go off on an adventure, and then come home and return to peace and quiet and normality with our elephant family. So I guess that makes me part of Neil Nation.
And somewhere in there, you'll have a bubble bath.
I was thinking about making a bubble bath joke at two different points in there, and it just felt wrong.
No, it's just so right. It's so right. Bubble baths are good, man.
Yeah. No, it's true. But anyway, look forward to talking about this episode. It's going to be a great show.
If they didn't want it to be a thing, they shouldn't have put it into multiple episodes. And now every time that I go to the store and go down the bubble bath aisle and I don't see Neil's bubble bath, I'm going to be upset until this happens. It's just golden marketing opportunity right there. That other face you see and voice you hear, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? Good to be back. And yes, I'm very excited to discuss the Season 1 finale. I loved Season 1 of Skeleton Crew. Season 1 was the best, and I cannot wait for Seasons 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm just going to throw that out there, okay? Just going to throw it because of manifest. You know how there's things like, I don't think it actually works like that, but when you just say manifest, maybe it'll actually happen. Maybe, fingers crossed. But yeah, really, I cannot wait to talk about this show. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get it out of the way now. Do we think Season 2 is happening? We'll talk about the finale. We'll break it all down. Do we think Season 2 is happening? Chris, you're shaking your head.
No, because from what I haven't done like hardcore research on this, but just from the little things that I've seen reported, I don't think this show got many more views than the Acolyte did. And I think as far as just how much traction the show has and people talking about it, it's kind of similar to the Acolyte. The difference is the Acolyte, while people watched the show, they had very mixed opinions on the show, and the discourse was very, very mixed. And whereas this show, I think it's about the same amount of people watching it and talking about it, but it's mostly overwhelmingly positive about. But when it comes down to the bottom line, it's the same amount of people talking about it. It's the same amount of people watching it. If Acolyte doesn't by default going to get a second season, then I don't think this show would either. And I think on top of that, I think it actually would be an even more of a disservice to the Acolyte if Skeleton Crew got a season 2 and the Acolyte didn't, because then it would suggest that they are going off of the discourse a little bit when the views are the same, which they shouldn't. So I as much as I want a season 2 of both shows, I think they're both kind of in the same boat.
Does anyone know how the numbers for the show compared to Ahsoka?
Less.
That's a very good question.
I think it's less,
okay.
But I don't know the exact numbers, nor do I know if they're out yet. But just based on what I'm seeing, I feel like Ahsoka was kind of up here, and then Acolyte was kind of down here, and then Skeleton Crew is kind of hovering around the Acolyte as well.
Right. See, the head. There's been a lot of headlines been thrown around, and all of them say, "Oh, the numbers haven't been great. They've been even less than Acolyte." But they always add the addendum. It's just for the first 2 episodes. I don't know if we have data for the rest of the series yet.
That's
and
important.
And you know, maybe Disney is waiting on that to make a final decision on the show. Personally, I think, and I said this about Acolyte, and I still think it's true. It's like I think Lucasfilm, at the end of the day, they've made some bad choices, but I don't think they'll ever throw a good idea away. I think they will find a way to bring something back. I don't think we've seen the last of The Stranger and Osha. I think we will see that story continue in some form or fashion. May not be soon, but it'll happen. I think with this show, it's less of a problem if whether this gets a season 2 or not, because this is in the Mandoverse. Because despite, you know, like, yes, I want to see these characters again, and I want to see this story continued, there's always going to be the possibility of Mandalorian season 4, if that happens. I'm assuming it's happening. Like, didn't Grogu make a pit stop on Adadin and they meet all these crazy kids and they have an adventure? Like, that could happen. Could happen with Ahsoka. Could happen with, you know, things. You know, we haven't got a confirmation of Book of Boba Fett season 2. Not expecting that to happen, even though I would love it. I'm not sitting here going like, oh, we're never going to see Fennec or Boba again. I'm like, they're out there. Their ranks are just waiting for their opportunity. They'll be back at some point. So I think, you know, we're in a universe that's all connected, there's more opportunities for the Skeleton Crew to come back versus, unfortunately, Acolyte, which is kind of off on its own, and you'd have to create circumstances in order for those characters to cross over into a different project. So I'm like, and also this, and not to get too far into the discussion here, but like, this show was very satisfying and gave a really good conclusion. I'm greedy, like Jod is on Adad, I'm super greedy. I want season 2, and I'm also like, I don't need it. I don't really, really need a season 2. This could be a great ending. Skeleton Crew being this fantastic one season show, it could be a thing.
Yeah,
it could be. There is a point there that like this is tied in with the Mandoverse, and so these characters can pop back up and show up here and there. And yeah, Acolyte wasn't tied in with anything. It's not like there's like 6 movies that all spin off of the events that take place from the Acolyte. Nothing like that. It's not like there's big mystery that still remains about a character who showed up for like 2 seconds in the finale that ties in with the entire story of the saga. But we're not talking about the Acolyte. I will say I do think there will be a second season. I don't know. I don't have any. I'm not, as I say all the time, I'm not an insider. I don't know this stuff, but I think the response has been good enough. If the numbers were the same as Acolyte, the response is the same, and it's part of the Mandoverse, and they want to, do something to set up more of Filoni's movie or some other story somewhere down the line. I think, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni going into a meeting with the investors, with the boards, with all of that, and really pushing for funding for another season. I think that carries a lot of weight, and it carries a lot more weight than anything anybody else could do for any of these non-Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Book of Boba shows. I think any other show that does the same as this, it's getting the Acolyte's fate. But this show, because of its connection, because it has those guys in its corner very directly, and it ties in with what else they want to do, then I think there's a very real possibility that we see a second season. But we likely don't hear anything until maybe roundabout April, say in like Tokyo, Japan. For some reason, they'll make like an announcement there for some reason. Who knows? Yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Let's plug some things and then let's talk about the finale.
If you are watching us on YouTube,
Stop. Chris, reset your things. I'll plug.
No.
Let's plug some things. And for once, I'm going to do it. So punch the subscribe button, Chewy, if you're listening or watching this on YouTube or Apple Podcast, Spotify, however you like to listen or watch the show. Punch the subscribe button. Never miss an episode. Know when we're going live. That's the best way to do that. And if you're listening live and you want to support us financially, you can super chat with us. It's a way to guarantee your inclusion in our Ask the SWU segment. You can also become a channel member and get a fun little SWU logo that shows up next to your name sometimes, but doesn't appear when we put your comment on the screen for reasons that don't make sense to me. You can also leave reviews on your favorite podcast platforms, podcast apps. That helps spread the word, helps let people know that it's a good show and worth listening to. And in between shows, join our Discord, get in on the conversation. Lots of fun stuff happening there. There's movie nights and game nights, all sorts of fun things that happen. And it's also another way to submit your questions for Ask the SWU. And of course, we've got our full Star Wars Underworld network, including shows like The Raeside, Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, The Tractor Beam, and more. And of course, follow us on social media at the SWU. We're mainly on the one where the skies are blue.
Right.
All
I will
right.
say, I will mention we some of you may have already realized we're live on Facebook again. We haven't done that in a bit.
We're live on the book face.
So definitely go find our page not at the SW, just the SWU, those letters, and like and follow so that you can get notified. So if you're not on YouTube, you can watch on Facebook too.
And because it is Facebook, we will just fact check Ben and say that it is in fact true that we are live on there. We're also making $1 million for every viewer that tunes in. So subscribe on Facebook and we'll watch that. That's all true. And you can say that on Facebook and you won't get in trouble. Just like how you can say Mark Zuckerberg is the reason that the Acolyte got canceled.
which is not technically, I say fact check green. Okay. I say that's true. I say that's technically true.
Oh my gosh.
All right, let's talk about the Acolyte. No, let's not talk about the Acolyte. Jeez. Let's talk about Skeleton Crew, Season 1, Episode 8, The Real Good Guys, written by Chris Ford and John Watts and directed by John Watts. Let's give some initial impressions on the episode, and we'll go around the table. And since it's the finale, and I like to keep everybody on their toes, Chris, we're going to throw it to you first.
Okay. Hopefully my audio is coming through okay now.
That's also the other reason for throwing to you first, is to make sure that you sound good, which you do.
Yes, it should be. Yes. So I feel like the finale to this show lived up to the expectations set by the show. You've been hearing my reviews for the last few months of the show. I've given a lot of the episodes 10 out of 10s. I liked almost all of them a really, real lot. So it definitely, the finale had a bit to live up to give a satisfying ending to what has been a really, really fantastic, really well-paced show that just started good. The middle was good, and it needed a good ending to finish us off. And it did. It did. It was very action packed. I didn't have any moments when I was watching it where I was like getting out of the story and like starting to think like, okay, like, how many minutes do we have left? Or like, where are we going to move on to this? Or where are we going to figure out this? I was just completely, fully immersed and, entertained by it. And it held my attention fully, which is great. So I thought just the editing, the pacing of it was great. A lot of just incredible action, and then just a really kind of satisfying and fun ending with all the characters and the storylines that were going on in the show. So this is kind of almost a rare moment for Star Wars, especially like TV that's live action, because we've had a lot of endings of shows that aren't quite, or endings of seasons that aren't quite fully satisfying, or it really leaves you wanting more, but then we don't get more. So this is a rare example of an entire season of a show that is really self-contained, that you can just watch the whole thing, and like watching kind of a movie, it just all fits and makes sense, and you don't necessarily, you're not left thinking, oh, I need to see more of this or that, or I need to find out what happens with this or that, which is very, very rare, honestly, and it shouldn't be so hard, but I guess it is. So yeah, this is really gold standard for endings. And, you know, I got my personal thing that I wanted, which is lots of gold. And that's all I cared about, was lots of literal gold. That's all I've been wanting the entire show. So very, very positive feelings towards the episode 8 of the show.
Yeah. And it felt, like you say, it's like a movie. It felt like a movie in the sense that they quite literally, the end credits had like movie end credits compared to the rest of the series, which had very much television end credits. That was a nice little touch at the end of the show. Ben, your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I love this episode. I adore this episode. I just kind of put a cap on this show as being, I think, I don't want to make any bold proclamations yet, but I think this is definitely one of my favorite series I've gotten so far. And I was thinking back to all the finales we've gotten in this new era of Star Wars TV, and I can't really think of one that I disliked. I think they all kind of did the job of like bringing it home, putting a cap on it. Sticking to landing, as a lot of people have said online. It's like, it's stuck to landing. I'm like, they kind of literally, KB kind of, and she landed that thing. She stuck to the landing, kind of a metaphor for the episode. But like, I think this episode, this whole season, this episode really personifies like the whole season's arc and how well it was pulled off, and all the big payoffs from almost every single episode. I've never seen it. I've seen very few series do this. Any series, Star Wars or otherwise, make a point to really pay off and everything from from Kim, to, everything else, like every little plot point from the previous episodes, nail it and put it down as like, okay, that's where that from. Okay, that's what I didn't really care for that episode with Hannah, but damn if they didn't bring it home and make a point for that episode and have that gun be a part of this plot. And it was great. It was satisfying. I think ultimately this was a very satisfying episode. My only complaint really is that it ended too soon. I could have taken another 5, 10, an hour more of this. I mean, yes, I think, I'm disappointed that like we didn't get an epilogue. We could have gotten a little bit more about this. Who's on that block raid runner? Like, what's going on? I want to know so much. I want to know everything. But I think it also ended perfectly. Honestly, I think it was a great way to kind of bring it all home and just have that ending, and the credits were great. Like, it's a beautiful episode.
Yeah. Ben, I just want to say, you say you could have taken another hour, this much. I'm never listening to you when you tell me how long an episode is going to be in the future. Because last week you told me this episode was going to be like 52 minutes or something. Like,
don't shoot the messenger, okay? I said I heard something, okay? It's last time I listened to the internet. I think I've learned by now.
I can't. I just have to agree with you both that like the episode was strong. It tied up the season really nicely. There was a little bit too much hand holding with the, hey, do you remember this from that other episode and this from that other episode? And this is just like that from the other episode. Like the fact that they were like really spelling it out. I'm like, okay, media literacy is dead. People can't figure this stuff out. So we have to hold people's hands so that there isn't a bunch of internet doofuses making videos going, well, how did they know that the gun was on the roof?
Oh my god.
Disney canon is stupid. Like that. I don't like. It's all there. It's all there. You don't need to trust your audience. Trust your audience a little bit. But it was good. The way that they paid off the supervisor, the way they got the parents involved in the finale. I think Wim's dad finally got his heroic moment, which we were all waiting for. I loved how he was such like a perfect dorky dad. like right down to the fact that when the power is out, he's looking out the window going, gosh, it's like the power is out on the whole block. I'm like, that is the most dad moment in all of Star Wars I've ever seen. It was incredible. But I love that he got to be a hero, and I love that Fern's mom got to be a hero, and KB and SM33 and everybody and Neil and everybody got their moments in the finale. Even Jod, for as bad a dude as he was in the end, we still got to understand him a little bit more in these episodes. Strong finale. Could have stood for another 5 minutes or so to, do a little bit of the fan servicey. Hey, who's on the blockade runner? Who are these X-Wing pilots? How could this tie in with, say, a movie that's coming out in 2 years' time? I could have used some of that. I think that would have been fun, but I'm happy with how they left it. I don't think that took anything away from it. It just could have added a little bit more. But strong finale. Let's start with I think kind of the big reveal early on in the episode, which is what we've been speculating about, who or what the supervisor might be. We learn it's a big ass droid. Ben, what did you think of this reveal? What did you think of the supervisor and what we learned of AT-AT and what its purpose is and how its society works, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, thanks to you and our discussion last week, I was highly disappointed that it wasn't 500-year-old tack rented. Jeez.
I will say, like, when it turned around and it wasn't like a pirate, it wasn't Stephen Fry as a pirate, I was there was like a half second there where I was like, oh, and then I saw where it went and what it was building to. I'm like, okay, it was worth it. This was the right call. But there was about like a half second there where I was disappointed that my fan theory wasn't right. But instead of throwing a hissy fit and making a YouTube video about it, I watched the rest of the episode and went, this actually works. Continue, Ben.
Because you can do that. You can just like watch something and understand it. And just not make an angry video about it in your car.
I should have got the sunglasses out. Should have got the sunglasses
out. Don't give me any ideas. No. I think this is a great reveal. I love. It was almost a little bit of I feel like almost like a nod to like Rian Johnson of just like we build up this thing. The supervisor all season, and then just like 5 minutes in, the supervisor is a droid and also he's dead. And he wasn't really that important other than like all the power and everything ran through him, and very, very convenient. Very, very, very convenient that all that just happens to be connected to his systems, but that is neither here nor there. I think it's great. I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for the society. I think logically speaking, I think if it was a dude, like that's boring. And also, how does that make sense? And, I think like, of course, if they're going to set up a society that's going to seemingly go on for generations upon generations, there would be a droid there just hanging out and giving orders. And it's literally a giant droid. Obviously, there's all the wires going around and like the creepy vibes and the the Imperial looking elevator. Like, I think they were trying to give Palpatine vibes there. I think definitely they knew what they were doing with that. They definitely think what they wanted you to think. But I like that they did this, and I loved it. Also, I feel like the supervisor, like, because I think, what does it Jod say? He says something along the lines of, you just need to obey. And like, you could see it as playing along with him, but also I think it speaks badly on the supervisor. I think he's like, well said. And I'm like, this is bad, guys. AT-AT and these people are not in a good situation. They are, there's some really bad undertones. And that's one of the reasons why I would really want a season 2 is to explore this really probably the dark undertones of AT-AT and what they've been dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, the people of AT-AT have literally never seen the sky. Like, there's that beautiful moment when they break the barrier and they all look up and see the stars for the first time. Like, it's the supervisor is keeping them all under his giant droid thumb. But there's sort of an interesting like process to get to the supervisor, like how you would end up with a droid running a planet like this. Because in theory, right, you'd think, humans or sentients, let's say, can be corrupted. Like you can't leave sentients in charge of the money because the money will disappear into their friends' pockets. That's just sort of how these things go. A droid, in theory, is not going to do that. A droid, in theory, is going to be safe. And so they've built this whole society around the idea that they all, this droid is in charge and everybody works for this droid. And Ben, I don't think the supervisor was playing along. I think the supervisor genuinely believes that obeying, complete unquestioning obeying is the best way to be, and that is what he has instilled in At-Aten. You see that in Fern's mom. The way she, like, it takes till like the very end of the episode before she can even consider pulling that lever to destroy the barrier. These people have been programmed like droids to think that this is the only way, and it takes these 4 kids getting out from under this and going out into the galaxy to discover that, hey, there is more, there is other things, there's bad things out there, but there's also good things out there, which Fern has the great line late in the episode about that. Chris, what did you think of the reveal of the supervisor?
So it's already been mentioned by a few people, Matthew and Kenny in the comments. I immediately thought of Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Very, very, very similar design, especially with the part we're showing on screen right now with like the red eye part. Very, very similar to that character from that movie. And so, I mean, it makes sense that in this society, you really do see more droids than humans. And so it makes sense then that the supervisor and the leader of this society would also be a droid. Like that makes a lot of sense to me. So it was not a surprise to me. I thought it fit perfectly with the rest of the story and the world building that they had done for At-Aten. And it also interestingly adds a bit to that overarching story of there being more than one planet that was part of this group that At-Aten was in. Because, we saw, the other version of it, was that at Akron, I think?
Yeah, at Akron, yeah.
Yeah, at Akron that we saw several weeks ago. And perhaps they had a supervisor droid like this too, and they rebelled against it, or maybe it malfunctioned, or there's so many things that could have happened that are really interesting, and this kind of clues us in a little bit more on it. So that's really, really interesting. And I think it makes sense if you want to keep the story focused on the main characters like Jod and the kids. And if you're already introducing a lot of action with the parents it makes sense to not throw in another human or humanoid character that then we have to worry about their development. I think it's easier for a droid for us to be introduced to a droid and then have the droid be destroyed quickly after, and then us not think about it than it would be if it was a person. So I think this is also a good choice from just like a storytelling point of view, not to distract from the characters and the development and what's going on, and leave us with kind of more questions about like, who's the supervisor person? Where do they come from? It makes more sense if it's just an artificial intelligence, because we just know that as a thing. Some societies and dystopian stories have an artificial intelligence that controls them, and it's just a thing. And we don't have to think about the details of how it rose to power. It just makes sense to us. So I thought that was really
if we want to think about the details of how it rose to power, we just have to look around at what's happening around us, and we'll just have a bit of a sense. Right, Zuck? Boy, it's good to be back on Facebook.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I love it.
There's an interesting moment, right? The Jod presents himself as the emissary, as a Jedi, and the supervisor, of course, sees through this and says, the last transmission we got from the Republic says that all the Jedi are traitors. And one of the questions that we have wondered about throughout the season has been how much or how aware is anybody on Atadan of what's gone on, of the war, of the Empire, of the rebellion, all of that stuff? Is anybody aware of, what's been going on? Well, Supervisor has a little bit of a sense. And the Supervisor also uses the phrase when he's talking about Fern, and I think Fern's mom, uses the phrase that said something of the effect of, "We've been watching you with great interest." Which a certain somebody else once said that about someone once. Do we think, is there any connection between Palpatine and what's going on Atadan, either pre or post his death?
I mean, we know there's a little literal connection because they got the Execute Order 66 message after the war. So like there was, at least up until the end of the Clone Wars, they had communication with the outside, which the people of Atadan did not, apparently. It didn't seem that they were, it didn't seem that they were being kept in the loop about these things. And it didn't seem like they were like you would think, like, if everything was above board, they would get, daily or weekly or even yearly news reports from the Republic saying, hey, this is what's going on. And then they would update their history books. But no, they don't know about anything. They don't know about the destruction of Alderaan. They don't know about the Jedi turning traitors and being killed. Nothing. And there is something, dare I say, insidious about what's going on here. And, and the fact that does draw that question of just like, did Palpatine know about Atadan? Well, why would he just let it keep going? Or did they get shipments? I mean, we know that they have this process that ship comes in and they load credits onto it and then it takes off. Did the Empire do this at some point? It's been a few years since the Empire has been extinguished. So I don't know. It's very, I'm curious, what did Palpatine know? What did they know about Palpatine? What was that connection? I doubt we're going to get answers to any of these questions. It's just interesting to throw them out there.
Interesting to ponder. Chris, do you have a thought on whether the Supervisor and Palpatine are connected in any sort of way?
So the show confuses me, and perhaps I can use y'all's memories, our collective memories, to try to unconfuse me. So at the beginning of the show, there's text on the screen, right? Mm-hmm. Their version of a crawl. And I'm pretty sure that in that text, they mentioned the New Republic because they're grounding you in the era that it's in and letting you know this is at the same timeline as The Mandalorian. However, is there any point in the actual show where any of the characters say the term New Republic, except for the owl lady and with the X-Wings?
I don't think so. Potentially, I think maybe in the beginning, the raid sequence at the beginning when Jod as Silvo raids that New Republic ship and they go inside the vault and there's nothing in there. I think people probably mentioned the New Republic in there. But otherwise, not on Atadan. No, they don't seem to be aware.
And I don't even think they mention the New Republic around the kids. Like, nobody the kids meet mentions the New Republic because the kids are aware of this stuff or unaware, and they're as I think the point is, if they had been told, oh, hey, something New Republic, then they're like, New Republic, what's the New Republic? Because they're like, what war? What happened to Alderaan? I don't know anything about the galaxy right now.
Because the Datteries that they have are, they call them Old Republic Datteries, so they refer to them as being older. But inside the Star Wars universe, that's referring to before the Clone Wars, before the rise of the Empire, right? Not because from our perspective as a fan, when we hear the term Old Republic, we're thinking of the MMO. But that's not really canon inside Star Wars. That's the Old Republic.
Yeah, I think when the pirates are seeing the Datteries in episode 2, I think they're looking at them going Old Republic, pre-Empire, just anything
pre-Empire.
Anything that goes from halfway through Revenge of the Sith.
Because then there's also I remember in the Clone Wars, Sassy 10 says something along the lines of "There's not been battles like this since the days of the Old Republic," and then like, okay, what are they talking about? They're in the Republic. They're talking about an older Republic. So there's
maybe that is still canon.
They're the Republic, the High Republic, the Old Republic, the Older Republic. There's a lot of republics here. There's a new republic now too. So
when the sequel trilogy comes out, when Simon Kinberg's movies come out, we'll have the newest republic.
Knew it.
Yeah. So basically all of these things inform me to answer the question of, is there anything going on with Palpatine or the Empire? And I don't think there is, because I think what happened was this planet is in communications with the Republic, but somehow Palpatine doesn't care about it or doesn't know about it. There's something protecting them from Palpatine.
Or he's keeping it hidden because he might need it, say, 30 years from now to build a big ass fleet of Star Destroyers.
Maybe, but I feel like Palpatine really corrodes everything that is within his touch. And so anything that has any dealings with Palpatine or the Empire falls apart. And that's the story of like the rest of Star Wars. Like all the other shows that are after the fall of the Republic and rise of the Empire deal with the fact that the Empire is a bad thing and it's a bad system that sometimes even turns good people against each other. And so I feel like this society still is too harmonious to be under the effect of the Empire in any way. And I feel like because they're still using terms like Republic and Republic emissary and all this stuff, I don't think that this planet knows that the Empire exists. I think that the last thing somehow they heard, or somehow the supervisor droid heard Order 66, or heard the fact that 66, heard of Order 66. But then after that, it's just complete cutoff. So I feel like whatever was connecting this planet to the Republic, whatever that connection was, it was severed when maybe it was through the Jedi, and then when the Jedi Order got taken out, then that connection was lost and it wasn't reestablished. Whoever knew about the planet maybe was killed in Order 66, something like that, or when the Jedi Temple was burned, that information got lost about where it was, all that stuff. And so I feel like the fact that they're still using terms like Republic and not Empire, I don't think Palpatine knows about it. I don't think they know about Palpatine. I don't think there's any relationship. I think they're stuck in time. They're stuck in a time before the fall of the Republic, and they're just assuming that the Republic's still out there, and they're just carrying on like normal, waiting for someone from the Republic at some point to show up. And the only reason why the people aren't antsy or confused about the fact that they're not actually talking to the Republic is probably all the communication happened through the supervisor, and the supervisor, being a droid, probably has a different perception of time than people. So the droid really doesn't care that, it doesn't matter, it's been like 30 years since the Republic has contacted us. That's nothing in the space of the millions of years that exist in time and history in Star Wars. So they're not, so it's just keeping everything going on the planet. It's keeping the great work going and just keeping the whole society going, waiting for whenever the Republic needs to get a shipment of data reads or whatever they're going to interact with. So I think that layer of separation between the population and the Republic, with a supervisor in between, is normalizing the fact and making them not concerned about the fact that it has been a whole generation since they've heard from the Republic. They just assume it's still out there. I think that means that they have no connection with the Empire. Clearly, then they also don't know about the fall of the Empire and the rise of the New Republic at all either. Now, they're going to find out, but we're not going to see that reaction. It's just implied.
And really quick, just piggybacking off of what you're saying here, like, we're assuming like they would have had, contact with the Republic, and maybe at one time they did, but maybe in more modern times that they aren't aware of, they would have had contact with their contact, if you will, would have been through another entity that maybe deals with the money of the galaxy. Maybe an organization that was name dropped and shown in this show. The banking clan. Maybe that was their contact. And guess what? Some bad stuff happened to the banking clan, at least the head of the banking clan at the end of the Clone Wars. That maybe could have been the catalyst for AT-AT losing contact with the Republic.
Yeah. There's definitely a case to be made for that. I do wonder, Palpatine's a smart guy. He might, and he clearly has bigger plans than just what we see in the original trilogy, because that's what we learned from Exegol, is that he's clearly has these long-term big goals that he would like to achieve that are beyond just 1 or 2 Death Stars. And now the question is, could he allow for his hubris to sort of, take a back seat, and his ego to take a back seat to his planning? Because by the time he's emperor, he wants everybody to know he's emperor. He spent all those years pretending to be a lowly senator and then just a kindly chancellor and all that stuff, and letting things happen. There's that great Clone Wars episode that ends where he says, for right now, we just kind of have to let things be and just see where the pieces fall. See where the pieces fall. But then once he becomes emperor, it's like, no, everything's the empire. Everything is the empire. Everything is part of the empire. Everything is mine. So could he, in that mindset, say, you know what, I'm not going to touch this AT-AT world because I might need it for later? Or would he be, or is he capable of doing that at this point when he is so, focused on celebrating him? Or does he just not know about it? Because I find it unlikely that the Chancellor of the Republic for a decade is not going to know about where all the money comes from. Quite literally, he's not going to know where the mint is. I find it unlikely that he wouldn't know these things. That seems to me to be something that even Valorum knew that, and all of Valorum's predecessors, like, this was something they had to know. This was something they would know. So if it's out there and it's hidden and allowed to be this sort of lost to time place while he has been in power for 30, 40 years, counting his chancellorship, it kind of feels like something he knows about and is allowing to happen for a reason, because he, again, wants to build 70 million, gajillion, bazillion, quadrillion Star Destroyers with Death Star guns in them for some reason.
Well, I mean, I think that the show, through its exposition, has provided some pretty good potential answers to these questions. Like, so you have the other planet at Ohio, or whatever it's called, and then you have the assumption that there's all these other planets as well, and so it's possible that they had resources as well. They potentially had mints or other things that they were making for the Republic. And they all seem to be like ravaged at this point. I mean, you look at Akron and, it's very dystopian. The society is completely collapsed. And I think that presumably they are aware of the Empire, because don't we see parts on that planet that the armies have that are connected to that newer era? So they've had dealings with it. So that's not a necessarily hidden lost planet like Aten is. So, and then when you go up into the that tower chamber and at Akron, the directions to get to Aten are destroyed as well. Now, just as a quick aside, was it? I know there was something that happened with SM-33 towards the end of that episode. Was he saying that he was the one that destroyed those directions?
Yes.
Okay.
At Captain Renaud's behest.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, because what that means is, for some reason, no one followed those directions back to Aten. But do we know how long ago that was, though? I mean, it could have been, because you look at the decomposing skeleton of Smee's captain, possibly. It could have been a while ago. So there could have been something that happened where all of these societies were dealing with the Empire and their resources were being stripped by the Empire, but because of what happened with the directions to Aten being destroyed, the Empire itself and Palpatine himself couldn't actually follow that back to Aten, and that's what protected that planet when all the other ones weren't. And then that's why you have a collapsed society that got ravaged by the Empire on Akron, and then you have a society that's insulated and protected and still back in a time warp of what it was like during the height of the Republic on Aten. So I think that there's a lot of clues in that can kind of be used to kind of calculate what happened and why, you know, there might not be that direct dealing between the Empire and why ultimately the Empire didn't ruin Aten. Like all these other places were ruined by either themselves or an external force or a combination of both.
That's a good point. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Jod. We see, he goes to the supervisor. He brings Fern and her mom. He has the showdown. He kills the supervisor, and we learn a little bit about his past. The question was, how does he know these Jedi things? Was he a Jedi? Is he still a Jedi? The answer we get is that he was found as a child by a Jedi after growing up in squalor. He got a little bit of training, and then the purge came, and he was left on his own just to, use what he had learned to keep himself alive. And now the way he decided to keep himself alive, the only way he could was piracy and, stealing credits and scrounging around like that. Ben, I'll go to you first. What did you think of this reveal about Jod's past? And what did you think of how of Jod's actions, his final actions in this episode?
Yeah, it was funny seeing the discourse, and also from my point of view, because I had similar thoughts. I'm not gonna act like I thought better than anyone else, because Jude Law back, I think even towards the start of the season, or maybe even before the season began, said, "Oh, episode 7 is my favorite. It's where you learn more about Jod," and that got misconstrued into, we're gonna get a big, backstory on Jod. We're gonna get some flashback or something like that. We're gonna get an Order 66 flashback and found out how he survived Order 66 and all this kind of stuff. Obviously that did not happen. It was a different way. It was kind of closer to what Jude Law originally said, which was, we learned he was a bad guy. We learned a lot about Jod, and we learned that he was just a really, really bad guy that was willing to do anything to things big to greed. And I think that was outlined even more so. I'm glad that they didn't really pull back on that. They didn't make him out to being a mustache twirling villain that was willing to things. I think when he says, "Oh, I didn't want to hurt anyone," I think he's telling the truth. I think he was telling his men, "Don't hurt them." Not in a really good way, though. It was more like, "I need them as workers. Don't kill any of them. I need them to work for me."
Yeah, but Jod's a guy who's willing to kill, but he doesn't necessarily want to. It's not his first choice.
Right. I think so. There is that glimmer of that pinprick of light in him, the choosing his words. And I think so. I do like that. I liked that we got this little moment, and I say this honestly, I hope this is all we get of his backstory. I don't want to know, and I don't need to know who the Jedi is.
Just wait for next week when they announce Star Wars Jod, an ongoing series coming from Marvel Comics starting June 2025.
Look, okay, whatever. If they want to do that, that's fine. It's fine. I'm not going to read it, okay? Because I'm way behind on comics. I'm not going to read that anyway. So somebody tell me what happens. But I don't need that. I think that's a great way I think it's a great organic way, and it's a great moment between him and Wim, of him in his own way trying to get through to him and trying to make him understand this is why I am this giant a-hole that just wants money, is because I've had it really rough. And it doesn't justify his actions, but it helps you understand a little bit about, like, this guy's just been bottom of the barrel from the start. And, he had a really rough life. And it I think it does get through to Wim a little bit. I like the moment at the end where Wim calls out to him as they're going down the elevator, and obviously he doesn't go, but it's Wim kind of showing him compassion that he really doesn't deserve after nearly killing all of them. But it's a great moment. And I think, I don't know, it's very interesting. I think where this goes from here, and obviously Jod is in the wind, which I think, I know everyone was like, he yelled at Neil, he should die last week. I'm glad he's not dead. I'm glad he's still around. He can still pop up at other places. But I like that, this is things, because there's a lot. I mean, you look at the end of this episode, maybe we'll get to it, but like the pirates, there's a bunch of pirates still on that ship. Urkel dude, he's still out there. Maybe he's alive, maybe he's dead. Jod's still out there. Like, there's still a lot to clean up at Addin that we didn't get resolved. So I'm very curious if they ever go back to that. But Jod in and of himself, I really liked his arc and where that story ended and where they took it.
Mm-hmm. Chris, your thoughts on Jod and his backstory and the conclusion to his arc?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it was fitting with a lot of the speculation that we were having. So there wasn't anything like shocking in there, which I think that's kind of one of the most notable things about this show is the show been nothing super shocking or surprising or like really big twist in this show. It just kind of goes along how you think it would go along. And there's moments where the characters might be shocked, but the audience already knows kind of what's up. So I think this is just another moment here where that reveal, it's like, we kind of know that that's what's going on. I think it's just kind of just this, it fits with the tonality of the show. I think he's a very interesting character. I like the idea of having a bit of a rogue character that's not necessarily a gray character, because I think Star Wars tends to, a lot of times, especially recently, have like characters where you kind of sympathize with them a little bit, or characters that, are moving. So they start out being like an evil character, an antagonist, but then they move into being a hero character, or the opposite, characters that are heroes that fall. So I think it's kind of almost refreshing to have almost like a basic character that's just like, oh, this is a rogue character who's an antagonist, and there's really nothing else to it. I think you need those once in a while. You can't have too much of just wildness with that, and I think it's good to have that, straightforwardness in at points, especially in a show like this that has a bit of an emotional simplicity to it. Like, it's not unrealistic, but it's also not a overly complex show either.
Mm-hmm. What's next for Jod? Like, he this was his big play, and like, I'm not saying what show is he going to show up in next or what movie or anything like that, but like, this is a guy who he kind of bet everything on this, but he's also a guy that has been down before. We see it quite literally in the first episode. He gets thrown in the brig for his failures as captain. But he always finds a way to climb back out. Do we have any thoughts on what the path forward for Jod might be, how he might climb his way out of this one?
I mean, I would hope self-reflection.
I mean, this is one of the reasons why, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. We'll talk about it more as we progress, where this is a very satisfying and self-contained finale to the story, because his character really doesn't have anywhere to go, and there's really nothing set up. You don't have you have other shows where you have characters who are antagonists, but you have those hints of them cracking, and you have those hints of the light coming back into them. And that's not the case with him. He's not written in such a way that, you're like, oh, he's second guessing his ways. Like, he does not have that type of character arc going on. He's existing as a villain and as a foil to the hero characters, as a pure foil. There's nothing going on with him, and he just is who he is. And throughout the episodes, he just reveals himself to be a not a trustworthy person who's thinking of himself first. And that's just who his character is. But there's no hint at that changing. So I think if anything, they could potentially bring his character back and introduce a new role for his character, which could be moving in one direction or the other with that. But at this point, it's not necessary, nor is it set up, nor does it feel like it needs to happen. I think just like kind of Hondo can go either way depending on what's good for him. I think he's another character like that who's just like whatever is in his self-interest, he's gonna do.
Yeah, there's part of me that wants to see him meet Ezra and Hera, because I've said this before and I'll say it one more time. He to me is Kanan if he never met Hera. He is, yes, he wasn't technically a Padawan, or we don't know if he was, but like this is a guy who lost everything in Order 66, had to go underground, and was fighting to survive. Doing some, let's say, less than honest things. And Kanan met Hera, becomes a Jedi, goes back to his Jedi roots, becomes a rebel. We know the story. Jod never gets to that point. Instead, he stays a pirate through the end of the Empire and into the years afterwards. And so I think it would be interesting to have those two characters meet him and get what they make of him, because they've seen what somebody can do if they get off that path. Admittedly, Kanan got off it a lot sooner. The other thing I've been thinking about with Jod is, we've talked about this show as being a Mandoverse show, but it has no connections to the Mandoverse. And like, I'm not saying that as a criticism. I don't need every show to have Grogu and Din Djarin showing up. Like I'm fine. I'm very happy with the show. The only connection that we got is Vane, which I kind of love that was the only thing they did. But why tie it in? Why say it's tied in with that larger story if you're not going to do those connections? Well, because somewhere down the line it's going to factor in. And Ad-Atten is now no longer protected. The New Republic is aware of it. But there's probably a lot of other people out there who think like Jod and would like to get in there and would like a lot of money. And maybe they have a war machine that needs to be funded, and maybe they need a way in. Jod could be that kind of way in. He seems to still be on the planet. I suspect he's just going to lay low until, someone comes a knocking, be it a certain Blue Grand Admiral or someone else who wants a way in to get at this money, because the money ain't going anywhere. Money is there. People still like money. That's something everybody knows, is that most people like money and will want to go where there is lots of it. And we'll see where that leads to. But yeah, he is, like you said, Chris, he's a rogue. He's not. He's gonna be good. He's gonna be bad, depending on what serves him. Yeah. Let's run through. We've talked a lot about this finale, but we haven't really even touched on the main characters of the show. We've touched a little bit on Wim, Fern, Neil, and KB, but not too much. What did we think of the way their arcs paid off? Pick your favorite and start with them, Chris. Pick your favorite of the kids and start with them.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pick up what stands out the most to me. So the scene that I thought was the best scene of this episode was up in the tower with the supervisor, and then after the supervisor gets destroyed, when you have Fern and her mother up there. And the reason why I thought this scene was so fantastic is at the beginning of the show, when these characters are first introduced, Fern's mother is this really important character who's very sure of herself and her place in society, and all she wants is for her daughter to ascend into those ranks, and she's there, trying to shape her daughter's life. And Fern, while she's projecting a lot of confidence, she's very, very insecure, very unsure of herself, very inexperienced at the beginning of the show. The entire process of the show is Fern's mother's reality kind of getting torn apart. Her learning that there's kind of more going on than she knows about, and learning that it's a lot more difficult to deal with than she might think. And then it's Fern learning through all the things, all the experiences that she's having, how to take control of her life, how to have that confidence, how to get leadership, and that experience. And so by the time you get to this episode and those two characters are together and experiencing something together again for the first time since the beginning of the show, you can see a massive difference in their dynamics, where now Fern is the one that's in control and confident, and her mother's the one that is kind of floating around and doesn't really know what to do. And I thought there was a moment where that was so well acted in this show, where they're both kind of cowering in the corner as John's going about his villainy, and Fern's mother just looks completely helpless. She looks like a deer in headlights. She's just like looking around. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to process what's going on. She doesn't know how to get them out of that situation. Fern looks so calm and together in that moment. She's not exasperated. She's stressed, but you can tell like she's able to think. She's able to process what's going on. She's formulating a plan on how to get them out of that situation. And you can see by the way that the actors are carrying themselves and their body language, you can see the different dynamics between the two of them, and it's very clear. And I thought that was very well done, because that's something really subtle. If you're writing out a plot, you don't need that for the plot. That didn't need to be there. But the fact that it is so huge for character development, because it shows the progression in comparison to our mother that Fern went through in the entire show, which was absolutely incredible. So I think all the characters have moments like that, but that one really stood out for me because the juxtaposition there was so strong and it was so well acted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Ryan Kira Armstrong and Carrie Condon in that scene were absolutely terrific, as was Jude Law. But that sort of goes without saying for the entirety of the entirety of the series. And the other thing with Fern, right, is this is now her third time being sort of held at some form of blade point by Jod. He had her in Rennett's lair in the episode 5. Had her at lightsaber point in the last episode. So like she's been through this now. She's had time to think about, okay, what do I do if I'm in that situation? And again, it pays off the story very, very nicely. Ben, pick your favorite child and talk about them.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about a lot of what Chris said, and also just like a previous episode, Jod was like your spoiled, sheltered children, which is like, okay, dude, most kids are spoiled and sheltered. Like, how is that an insult? But also, like, it's not just the kids that are sheltered. Like, everyone in that end, the adults are sheltered. And the one I'm going to pick here, I love the dynamic between Wim and Wendell. That pairing is so great. And because I've been rooting for Wendell this whole season, you have him and everyone in the fandom was like, ew, he sucks or whatever else. I'm just like, no, guys, he doesn't suck as a dad. I think he genuinely loves his kid. He's just kind of this absent father who's just kind of busy with his work and maybe approaches things a little bit differently and doesn't appreciate what he has, just like Wim doesn't appreciate. Wim admits in this episode, I realized how good home is. And then Wendell has basically in this episode an entire character arc, entire hero's journey, if you will, going from being very worried and being like, we're gonna stop this, we're not doing speeder box, to jumping the thing and being just cheering it over, which is just a great moment, to like being like son, I am a level 7 communications things, and we're gonna do moment. This, and him going things, and then being able and willing. And okay, I'm gonna out myself here, tell me if I'm crazy. Tell me if I'm insane. I know you will. When there's a moment where right before Wendell stands up and punches Jod, did anybody else, when he stops and he goes and he, puts his fist together, did anybody else think he was about to use the Force?
No.
Yes. I did.
Oh.
Yep.
Because I read stuff online, as I do. I read far too much online. And someone said, like, ooh, how crazy would it be if Wendell is like secretly a Force user or something? Mm-hmm. Like, how crazy would that be? And I'm just like, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy talk. But in that moment, I'm like, what's he doing? It didn't even dawn on me that maybe which is again, a fantastic moment. I'm glad he wasn't a secret Jedi. Okay. That would have been weird. Okay.
I wouldn't have liked it either.
No, I think it would have caused some problems. I think it's much better just like he just being a dad, and he kind of goes through what Wim has gone through this whole time in a very short period of time. And I think all the parents do. I love KB's moms. They're over there. They're not even in this episode very much, but they're like, "Oh, you can fix anything, honey." I'm like, "Yeah, you can, KB. Let's go!" Like all of them are so good, and even Neil's dad at the end, he's cheering on the B-wings and X-wings. He's going down. Like they're all great. The parents they're all just have a happy ending. It's so good.
Neil's dad needed to be more involved in the story. Where the hell was that guy for this entire run? One of my favorite funny moments in the episode was when Wim and Wendell are sitting around eating dinner, and Wendell is saying "Oh, isn't there's nothing better than a home cooked meal," and it's very clearly like a hungry man frozen dinner kind of thing. Just classic single dad kind of moment. Yeah, very, very good stuff. And I love it anytime the parent who has been kind of the that not adversary, not antagonist, not villain, but kind of been an obstacle to the kid throughout the adventure winds up having a key part in the resolution. I really like that Wendell got his moment there, where being a level 7 systems analyst, blah blah blah, helped him save the day.
Because he could have been, because in the end it could have been oh, he's just an idiot. He's at home, just going, "You darn kids and your bikes" the whole time. No, he gets involved. They all are involved in some way. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about KB. She gets the death fake out in the episode, but also, saves the day by calling the X-Wings in. Less involved in the finale than Fern or Wim, but still plays an important part and still kind of wraps up her arc. Her story kind of reached its apex a couple episodes ago when she nearly died. But in the first couple of episodes, she was only ever doing things when Fern told her to do them. She was always sort of playing second fiddle to everybody else around her. And in this episode, she's the one who, she chooses to take action. She goes off on her own. She gets everybody sort of rallied to get aboard to steal the ship. She steals the ship. She fixes SM-33. She flies off. She calls Kim. She figures it out. Yes, again, like I said, less involved, but that's KB. She is quietly the best character. Fern and Wim take up all the oxygen with all the banter and arguing back and forth. Neil takes up all the oxygen by just being adorable, and KB is just kind of there in the background doing the work, getting things done. That's kind of her role, and in this one we see her kind of take control in a way that she wouldn't have at the beginning of the series. So loved KB's role in this, loved her part in the finale. I never believed that she died, but I was very relieved when she woke up on that pile of money doing her best impression of Huel and Bill Burr from the end of Breaking Bad.
I couldn't believe that the characters actually thought she was dead, because because the whole point was she's trying to land the ship, and then when the ship goes down, it doesn't explode.
Yeah,
so I just assumed oh, she landed it. Yeah, I'm like, but I guess it does make sense if you don't have a lot of experience with things that as Star Wars fans we've seen 10,000 times. You might
there was a large dust cloud, but I think that comes from just the ship landing
Yeah,
heavily.
right.
And again, like you're saying, if you're just witnessing it for the first time, you might think, well, that's what happens when a ship crash lands.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a fiery explosion.
We know better though. We know if we don't see a big fireball, there's no way the person's dead because they like keeping people alive in Star Wars.
Exactly. Who wants to talk about Neil? Nobody.
I mean, I'll talk about Neil. I mean, he had his part to play, and I think it was like this thing that kept popping up that I was listening to people talk about it and reading comments and being like, oh yeah, they're gonna find Neil's gonna go get the thing. He's gonna find the big gun. I was just like, okay, whatever. Maybe that happens, maybe not. And you know, it kind of everyone that speculated that, good job. You nailed it. You nailed that theory. I love that he just not skipping a beat. None of these kids are skipping a beat. Like they're getting shot at, they're getting blown up. No big deal. You know, he gets shot off his speeder bike. He does a roll, and then the hide behind the things. Like, man, this guy's full commando. Like, he's great. Yeah, and it's just, you know, and I just love that they all had their part to play. Like, they didn't have this big come together moment, but I you know, other than the ending, to fight Jod, but like we've had that all season. I think they've mostly been together. I think it was, you know, really the few episodes ago where we really had them split apart. So I think it made sense to split them up, let them all do their thing, and let them all take their experience they've learned to, you know, actually do the job. I think it's just a great culmination of everything.
They've all learned from each other across the course of the season, and so now they put all of those lessons that they've learned from each other into action individually to save the day. That's good. It's good. All right. It's that time. It's time once again. It's your favorite time. It's your favorite segment. It's my favorite segment. For the last time on Skeleton Crew Season 1. It's time once again for Ben's Connection Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben's Connection Corner is filmed in front of a live studio audience. All right, Ben, one final time for Season 1 of Skeleton Crew. I nearly said the Bad Batch. Why can I not say what this freaking show is called? I said the Acolyte earlier. I just literally went Season 1 of the Skeleton Crew. What have you got for us?
I got some connections from Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, Amanda. Oh, okay, never mind. Talking about all the shows tonight. The first thing that I'll point out is something that I stupidly did not notice when I first watched the episode, and I was like, "What is this?" Because he kept the supervisor was talking to Fern and her mom and Jod, and his little light kept shifting from red to blue, and I was like, "Is he shifting?" I thought there was a connection between him shifting to red when he was talking to Jod because maybe he didn't like him or something like that. Like, is that what's going on here? I'm like, no, dummy. He's a giant astromech droid. Like, literally, he's got the red and blue that R2 shifts back and forth, which I think doesn't mean anything, seems to be. He's got the little things off the side that R2 has, and he also has a little teeny tiny little viewfinder there. So I love that this big ominous thing is just basically a giant astro droid. Really cool. Like that design. Very, very cool. We see Jod is blocking lightsaber bolts. Not lightsaber bolts. Lightsaber bolts. What the hell that is?
It's a new weapon.
Jod is blocking stun bolts with his lightsaber, which I think is something we've never really seen in live action. I know it's been all over the place in animation, but really cool to see it in live action. And Jod did it admirably for someone who really wasn't trained as a Jedi very much. Which they are big. You can just very easily just block those things. They're things. I don't know why you don't use stun blasts all the time. You just point it in someone's general direction, you can stun them, versus like you have to be very precise with the regular blaster bolts.
We went a really long time without seeing stun blasts. Like, you see them right at the beginning of A New Hope, and like I swear you don't see them again in a Lucas made Star Wars thing until like the Clone Wars. Like I cannot think of a single instance of them being used in the prequels or in Empire or Jedi. Maybe the Ewok movies.
I can't think of a time when they would have been useful. Like, I don't know. Like, generally speaking, it's, and it's just that one. It's just that one blast against Princess Leia, and that's it. Literally one of the first things we've seen. So weird. Very weird. But the return of the stun blast. Let's go. We have the return. I don't know if I actually mentioned this. I'm going to mention him now, okay? Because I don't know if I mentioned him from the first episode. The return of Boney Falfa, a.k.a. Bob Falfa. Obviously a sly little reference to Harrison Ford's character from American Graffiti. And I believe they didn't show it in this episode, but I think it was in the first episode. There is a Mel's Diner on Adden, I'm pretty sure.
Of course.
There's a diner in there that I think it says Mel's in Arabish.
Ben, I will say you did mention this on the first episode, so doesn't count.
Okay. All right. Then strike it from the record. I obviously this one's a big one. But we have the return of B-Wings, the best ship, the best starfighter in the history of starfighters, bar none. Okay, period. Love the starfighter, and they get to do that thing, the composite beam, that little tri-beam that shoots onto the ship. To make yourselves feel real old for a second, the last time we saw this, and also the first time we saw this, was in the Star Wars Rebels episode Wings of the Masters, which premiered November 11th, 2015, almost 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh.
So just insane. And I'll bookend this by saying that the Carillion Corvette that we see at the end of this episode feels kind of like a bookend to the show, being that the opening scene of this show was a direct riffing on the opening of A New Hope and the Tainted Four. So feels kind of like a prophecy fulfilled in a way.
I thought you were going to say it was the Sundered Heart. I was all worried for a second there.
No, the Sundered Heart doesn't exist. It never happened. Don't get me started.
Shout out to you if you know what the hell we're talking about with that. That goes back. You think Ben's reference there to Rebels being 10 years old is an ancient reference. And boy, you weren't there. You don't know if you weren't there for the Sundered Heart controversy.
Literally no one that understands that reference. No one. The people that were there forgot about it.
The people that were there didn't understand it either. It was great.
No, because it's completely irrational. It's stupid, but whatever.
Incredible. All right. Well, that's going to do it, Ben. Congratulations on completion of another incredible, wonderful season of insightful connections, tidbits, and factoids in our favorite segment, Ben's Connection Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben's Connection Corner is filmed in front of a live studio audience. Yay, we're gonna all jump and cheer like those people in that video. All right. Anything else we want to bring up about this episode before we hit final thoughts and scores out of 10?
All I'll add here is that the shot of Wim and his dad leaving the house and then going out and looking up into the sky and then that ship coming in is incredible for so many reasons. For one, it's just the visual aspect, obviously. But another thing is we rarely see characters on the ground in the same shot with giant ships. That rarely happens. But when it does happen, obviously it can be a kind of a disconnect, but they really did a good job of like melding the two and like to the point where the ship comes down and it starts turning on spotlights, and the spotlights, which is clearly a real light, passes over the actors and like connects it all and like visually makes like feel more real than would usually feel, because obviously there's a lot of visual effects. But that just stuck out to me. Like that's an amazingly well staged shot that just ties it all together.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. That John Watts. He knows how to put together a good movie and a good show. All right, so let's go around the table one last time. Give final thoughts and scores out of 10 for this episode, season 1, episode 8, The Real Good Guys. Chris, start us off. Final thoughts, score out of 10 for the season 1 finale of Skeleton Crew.
So to avoid just repeating my initial thoughts, because that's what I kind of would do, would just be to rephrase that. I'm just going to talk in general about the entire show, unless you had plans to talk about that after. Which okay, good.
Take it away.
So yes, I think that this show serves a very unique place among Star Wars shows, and the reason why is because I think this is probably the least connected, most insulated Star Wars show. Everything else begs the question of what order do I watch it in? Because there's just so much and everything's referencing everything else. And, you could go in the order it was released, or you could go in the order that chronologically, or you could go movies first and then TV shows and live action and animated. There's like so many ways to layer it, and you miss something no matter which way you do it. It's really complicated. But I think what can be said about this show is if you've never seen Star Wars before, or you've only seen bits and pieces of it, this is a very safe show to watch. You can just watch this show and really enjoy it and get pretty much almost the full amount of enjoyment out of it that you would if you were a very, a Star Wars fan that's very well versed in all the media, because it's not full of references. It's not full of foreshadowing. It's not full of fan service, cameos. It's not driven by the things that really are used to bolster a lot of the other Star Wars media, where they're relying a lot on our previous knowledge and previous affinity for Star Wars and situations and characters and things. This show is just good by itself. It's a good show. It's in the Star Wars universe. It's a good introduction to some of the basics of the Star Wars universe, like the Force. But at the same time, it's not so immersed in it that, if you watched it not knowing much about the universe, you wouldn't really be confused. I don't think you'd be confused. I think you'd be able to get through it and really understand like 99% of what's happening, and from the exposition in the show. And I think that's cool. I think Star Wars needs shows like that. I think it needs movies like that. I think it needs some there's so much now. There's so many movies, so many TV shows, so many types of media, that some things need to be introductory, and that also needs to be at different levels. You can't just have all the introductory stuff be for 4-year-olds. That's great. They need it too. But you have some people that are going to be watching Star Wars things for the first time and getting into it at different ages, at all ages. And so I think having something that is a show that mainly would fly very well with kind of children, older children, but then also has a few adult things in it, a few nods to like, hey, you know what's really going on here, like that can
that hotel.
The hotel, that character from that hotel, from the spaceport, like all that stuff. So I think that's great. So I love the role that the show plays, where it's enjoyable for everyone. It's just a very accessible show. It's very good. It doesn't take a lot of risks. I like that there's risky shows, but there should also be non-risky shows. This is just a basic, most people are going to like it because it's just very straightforward. It doesn't veer off into any very avant-garde or experimental places. And so, so this finale, I will give it a 10 out of 10. I think it's a fitting ending to the show. I think it fits with the quality of the entire show. And overall, I really, really am satisfied with the season. And if it's all we get, I'm fine. I will be excited if we get more. But I do think that they told the story in such a way that it would be completely fine if that's all we get. And maybe these characters just scatter into other shows and media.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, your final thoughts and score out of 10 for the episode or the series, however you feel like taking this.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo a lot of what Chris said. I mean, I think this show, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's going to have legs. I think people are really have already loved it. I think a lot of people are going to love it in the future that haven't seen it yet as of this moment. And I think if Disney and Lucasfilm do not renew it for at least one more season, they're going to regret it, because I think there's going to be a lot of people in the future that's going to be watching this show and going to be wanting a second and third season to watch. Because I think this show has stayed high on the list of as being one of the best shows they've produced thus far, and it's per the reasons that Chris laid out there and so many more. I think this episode overall, I think, just put a nice pin on it in regards to giving us a really great, solid ending, and leaving you wanting more, which I think is something that you want out of any show. I think movies can be a time commitment, and it really sucks when you've spent 2 hours through 3.5 hours in a movie theater, and you're like, that didn't satisfy me. I think it's worse with a TV series. I think shows you really put in a lot of effort into. I invested several days into this. I invested weeks into this, and that final episode, it can make or break a show. It really can. I think this episode really did a lot of heavy lifting and brought it all home into a really satisfying episode that tied up a lot of loose ends. And obviously there's a lot of stuff left out there that could be followed up on, and I hope will be in the near future. Like I said off the top, I really did enjoy this episode as a finale. I hope it's not the series finale because I'm greedy, but I also understand that it was a really great, cathartic, satisfying moment. Wim looking up into the stars and seeing X-wings flying the Carillion Corvette. It's Star Wars, man. It is Star Wars personified. John Watts and Chris Ford. They already
Chris
made
Watts and John Ford. Those guys, love them.
Yeah. Those, they already made what I consider to be one of the best superhero trilogies of this decade with the Spider-Man trilogy. And I think they've easily made one of the best Star Wars series ever. So I'm going to give this episode in particular a 9.5 out of 10. I'm only taking a half a point off because I wanted the episode to be 2 hours, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I will echo a lot of what has been said. The show did such an amazing job of being Star Wars without relying on Star Wars as a crutch. It was, it got the core of Star Wars right, and it made us, feel the way Star Wars should make us feel. But it did that without creating a barrier for entry for folks who don't know who all these characters are, who haven't watched the Clone Wars, who haven't watched Rebels, who haven't watched The Mandalorian, who probably haven't seen a Star Wars movie since 2019. It allowed for those folks to come in and watch the show as well and be entertained by it and get that feeling again. And while I love a show like Ahsoka that just is unabashed in the way it brings in characters and plot lines and stuff from things that are kind of obscure if you're not super deep into this like we are, I also love a show that's just hey, this is just a fun story that happens to take place in the Star Wars universe. And like Chris said, you need both, and I think this year we did get both. We got the Acolyte and we got this, and that scratches both itches. The only difference being, I think this show was more consistent in its quality. The Acolyte had more peaks and valleys. This show was more of a consistent, steady climb of good quality storytelling. So loved it. I do hope we get a second season. And if not, then I hope we see these characters again very, very soon. 10 out of 10 from me for both the show and the episode. Got a couple of super chats we'll get to very quickly from our good buddy Joel Davis. Joel says, personally, I don't need a season 2, but I wouldn't mind plot points continuing in other stories, sort of like what Marvel does with storylines.
Yeah,
I see where you're coming from. I'd rather have a season 2 because when stuff shows up in other things in Marvel, sometimes it feels afterthoughtish. Like, I was really excited for the Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor 3, and they were out of there in 10 minutes. So, like, if I go into, let's say, The Mandalorian and Grogu, and they're like, guess what? Fern and KB are going to be in it, and they're in it for like 2 minutes. That's better than nothing, sure. But I don't want that to be a replacement for season 2. That's all I'm getting at. Do both. Why not both?
Should be both.
Yes, should be both. Joel also says, check out Monday's Eye on Canon, where we, funnily enough, will just talk about the accessibility of Star Wars projects and how accessible they should be. Well, there you go.
Nice.
Tune in for
Joel, I don't know if you know this, but you don't have to pay for shout-outs for your podcast. You were on the Star Wars Underworld Network. You get free shout-outs. You can just ask for it.
Well, check out Eye on Canon on Monday on live on this very channel for what will assuredly be a very interesting conversation about making Star Wars so that everybody can see it, but also tuning in, making it so that people who do the homework get a little something extra out of it. I'm sure it'll be fascinating to listen to. All right. I think we've had a terrific discussion here, and I think we can call it for this week and begin to wrap things up for this episode.
Wow, I've never seen this before. Member for 6 months. That's a cool milestone. To Joseph Cooper, congratulations. Thank you for supporting us for 6 months. He says, not sure why I have one last week, so I'll use this to remind everyone. Like, subscribe, and follow the SWU everywhere except in person. So I guess you get like a free super chat for being a member.
He's doing the poll for us.
All right.
That's cool. That's really cool. Thank you, Joseph, and thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. So we'll be back with another episode, same time, same place next week. We're also back in Zuckerberg land. If you want a beacon of light and hope over there, we are broadcasting back there. Again, I'm assuming this is on the
pinpricks of hope, I think is the is the way to describe us.
Yeah, so this is on the new Star Wars Underworld page, right, Ben? That's where it's streaming now?
Right.
Okay.
Basically, they deleted our old page, and then they wouldn't let us broadcast on the new page for 2 months. Yeah. The page turned 2 months old just the other day. So now we're back on Facebook for now.
Awesome. So so make sure you're following. If you don't see our streams or posts or anything, make sure you search for the Star Wars Underworld again. The page literally called the SWU, not the hyperlink, but the actual name of the page, the SWU. That's the new one. Check that out, and check us out. We're on Blue Sky. We're on all the places that people are running to these days. So check us out over there. Dominic, thank you so much for hosting.
It's my pleasure as always. It was a lot of fun talking about the season 1. I'm going to keep emphasizing that season 1 finale of Skeleton Crew, and I look forward to the announcement of season 2 in a couple of months at Star Wars Celebration Japan, which I bought my plane tickets for this week, so I am definitely going to. Yay! I'm very excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. What do I want to promote? Oh, right. DominicGJones.substack.com. Follow that. Got lots and lots posting twice a week there. You're gonna be posting twice a week there forever and ever, amen. So follow that. It's called Hot Off the Press. You can search that. DominicGJones.substack.com. And if you want to talk some hockey, like if you wanted to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs winning in overtime over the New Jersey Devils tonight, you can tune into Game Over Toronto, which I will be on this Saturday talking about the Leafs taking on the Montreal Canadiens. So tune into that as well. That's everything I got. Great show. See everybody again in 7 days' time.
You can follow Dominic Greedo Jones at DominicJ25. That's what it stands for, right?
Oh, yes, that is what it stands for. Yeah. How could I forget my own middle name? It's on my birth certificate and my passport.
I'm Dominic J25. Ben, thank you so much for hosting as well.
Oh, it was a pleasure as always. Especially pleasure talking about this amazing show. I'm gonna miss it next week. I'm gonna miss it for a while, but can't wait for season 2. Wink, wink, wink. Make it happen, Lucasfilm. But I'm not done talking about it. Okay, I will. I can confirm right now. the return of the IPC podcast. We haven't posted in way too long. I'm sorry, okay? We've been busy, but stuff's happened, and it's time for our yearly tradition discussing the top 5 most anticipated movies of 2025. So yeah, definitely go over there, find the Intergalactic Peace Hangout Facebook group, or just follow us at IPC Podcast on social media. Send in your lists, because we're going to be broadcasting live this upcoming Tuesday. Should be a heck of a lot of fun, and we'll get in some Skeleton Crew talk and whatever else we've been watching. It should be a good time.
My most anticipated movie of 2025 is The Mandalorian and Grogu. And yes, I know it comes out next year, but I'm more excited for that movie than any other movie coming out this year. So, yay.
And as long as your list is in a particular order, that's fine with me.
Also, I'm not totally convinced there won't be a surprise bump up. It's unlikely. I'm not betting on it.
Oh,
but
now you've got me thinking.
But like, you know, things get canceled, things get moved around. This movie's been finished shooting last year. That's about the same timeline it took to do post on all of the sequel trilogy movies. They could just be done early. That's fine. That's fair. But like, if say something wasn't ready, or there was a Disney desperately had a hole to fill, wouldn't it be fun to say, hey, guess what? December 18th, 2026. Everybody come out to the theaters. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But I could see it. I could see it like potentially one day soon, because they'd have to make that announcement soon. But you know,
I think I was looking at what movies were coming out around the same time as Mando and Grogu, and there wasn't anything like overshadowing it or competing with it directly. So I think that time frame's really good. But if for some reason
they're going to have Avatar Fire and Ice, or whatever the hell it's called, it's coming.
Yeah, they're not an
Avatar of Ice and Fire. But isn't there like a Marvel movie that comes out, like an Avengers movie that's supposed to come out like at the same time as Mando Grogu?
No, it's off by 3 or 4 weeks. Like, it's far enough away that I'm not too worried about it.
Okay.
Like, if there was a bunch of other ones with that, yes. But it's just that.
As long as Star Wars
solo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as long as Star Wars gets to go first, I want to be first. I don't want to like play second fiddle to the friggin' Avengers.
I think it's first. I think Avengers is usually more of a.
Maybe we'll just have the first ever November or January Star Wars movie.
Yeah, why not? Avengers Doomsday currently slated for a May 1st, 2026 release date, whereas the Mandalorian and Grogu is currently slated for a May 22nd. 2026
3 weeks between them.
Did we learn nothing? Did we learn nothing from Solo: A Star Wars Story?
But that wasn't the only thing.
No,
that wasn't the only. There was also like a bunch of other Deadpool and a bunch of other stuff in there.
Move it to December. Make
Avatar's
Jim
gonna be the same.
Make Jim have his movie be in November and give Star Wars December back.
Put even more pressure on those downtrodden, overworked VFX artists and get them to get this movie out in 5 months earlier.
Exactly. Darn it.
So I'm not sure. Anyway, what we were doing? Oh yeah, plugging things. I don't know how that happened. But it did. Check out all these other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network. Ion Cannon, The Raeside, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy Track, and more. Another shout out to Joel and Ion Cannon. Check that show out, as they will be talking about the accessibility of Star Wars. Check it out on their next episode. Make sure that you also join the SWU Network Discord. We got lots of fun going on over there. It's a great place to network if you're going to Celebration Japan, or if you want to follow people who are and get a vicarious experience. Both of those are great for the join the SWU.
Tomorrow night, as of recording this, if you're listening to this later, it'll be today. Join us on Discord. We're going to be watching Treasure Planet, which is kind of sort of a inspiration on Skeleton Crew. So that should be interesting.
That's awesome. I love that movie. That's some good music. And then make sure on your way out that you subscribe to whatever you're watching or listening to us on. And thanks to everyone who super chatted with us. And thanks to our channel members for supporting us. That's it. We're out of here. For Ben and Dom, my name is Chris. And may the force be with you.
It's a wrap.